Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
This is Jerry Beck, animation historian extraordinaire, and you're listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures. With your hosts, Aljon Go and Dave Bossert.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week, we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culturist. And you can email me, Aljon, ALJON, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Well, Aljon, here we are. This is our fourth truncated program. I hope we're not losing too many listeners who really enjoy our what we're watching and the news recaps and things. But we're going to be back next week live, Aljon and I, from our global travels here. But today we've got part 2 with layout artist Ed Ghertner.
All right, now time for our main event. Let's sit back and relax and enjoy Ed Ghertner in the hot seat right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. We would like to thank Christine Bannis, Spencer Wright, Lindsay Scaife, and Joshua Volkert. Support the show for as little as 99 cents per month by clicking on our listener support link in our show notes. If you are interested in advertising your event, business, or service, please email Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. Thank you for your ongoing support.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we're back again with art directors, layout supervisor, designer, animator, Ed Ghertner for episode 2 of a fascinating conversation. Ed, welcome back to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
So, last week we kind of left off with you politely saying we were moved off the studio lot over to the facility on Flower Street by Walt Disney Imagineering. And I said it more bluntly, we were kicked off the studio lot. Okay.
And then I'll work with you on this one. We got moved into that shithole. And seriously, my desk, they moved my desk in. I came out of, here we are in the beautiful studio building that Walt built.
The Kem Weber design studio campus.
Oh, yeah. Everything was beautiful, and here we are in this hole.
Yeah, it was a pop-up, one of these concrete warehouse buildings.
Yeah. And they had, the metal tubes coming down for the air conditioning. Yeah. And my desk was covered with flies.
Yes, coming out of the air conditioning ducts. Yeah.
And I just shook my head and I kind of went.
Dead flies, though. We want to make sure.
No, they were dead.
Flies.
They were all dead flies, yes.
Yeah, at that point, nobody could afford live flies.
No. I thought, well, is this another gag that somebody's pulled? But no, it wasn't. And I'll back up just a little bit because my time on The Mouse Detective as an art director, I got to work with Henry Mancini. And I wish I had cameras were around, phone cameras, because I just have this picture in my mind with me and Henry Mancini sitting on the floor of the old animation building. And he had written a lullaby for the movie after the toy sequence, the toy store fight. And it was the characters going back to Basil's flat.
Right.
And I had done 10 to 12 pastels, which I learned from working with Mel Shaw for a few months. And it was a really nice song, but I understood why they cut it out of the picture, because it stopped the picture cold.
Yeah.
But I still have that, and I'm going to try and put it together.
The pastels.
Yeah. And I have
awesome.
the song too, so I'm trying to. Eventually, I'll get there.
But you finished out Great Mouse Detective doing layout, right?
No, that's where we move forward now. A few months into that, working at that place on Flower Street, which is now the ARL and is beautiful.
Yeah.
I got a call from an outside source to work on the Garfield TV specials. Okay. And so I kind of weighed.
And they were doing a series of those specials.
Yeah.
Right? There was like 5 or 6 of them, weren't they?
Yeah.
So that was like a long-term employment.
It was a long-term thing. And and I thought, am I harken back because people will say, well, are you a Disney artist? Well, I'm my artist. I am an artist that works for Disney, and that's
but you were also a Disney artist. I mean, you have to own that, because
I love being.
You worked on a lot of the pictures during the Renaissance of Disney animation.
Yeah,
so you have every right to be called a Disney artist, even though you've done a lot of other things.
Yeah, and so I decided to take the chance and move. I figured I could leave at this point because I felt I wasn't being. This was in my head. They weren't being fair to me because I was told I'd be in all the meetings and my artwork would be used. And I saw my artwork being changed, and there were specific things that I had done on the Mouse Detective that were being changed. And I thought, well, if I take it now, they're going to keep giving. They're going to keep taking. So I decided to leave.
Did you feel like you were being undercut by anybody, or was it just...
Yeah, I felt that I was being punished.
Yeah.
So, and it could have been just me, being the artist, we all have, if you're an artist, you're not in the middle. You're either one side or the other, you have to be. But Phil Roman called, and I went to work with him. And I worked with him for a year, and we did a couple specials. And then I felt Disney was where I belong. They paid for my education. They do the best stuff. I want to work for them again. So I checked in with Disney TV and went over to Disney TV as a designer. And funny thing is that I hooked up with Mike Perazza again. He was over there, and we did. I came back on the DuckTales show.
Okay.
And there were 2 of us were doing layout, background design, and so we did that for a couple seasons, and which was a great stepping stone for the next shows that were coming up. And the next show that came up was Winnie the Pooh. And so I got to work as...
And that's the New Adventures of
Winnie the Pooh.
The TV series that they did in 1990.
Yeah, it was 86 to 89 or 90.
Yeah.
And I got to art direct that. And so I'm a traditionalist. I feel like if you're going to redo something, take what was there and push it forward.
Yeah.
So I went back and I searched the archives for all the stuff they did for the shorts for Winnie the Pooh, and I extrapolated on it. So, drawing out the 100-acre woods and giving... drawing Piglet's room. And I even had an idea. I have a model here that I still have that I built for Tigger's house, which we never got to do. I thought that we could have another flood in the 100-Acre Woods. And the stuff that floated in, all the other characters gathered up and made a treehouse for Tigger. And so I followed that through for the first season. And then the producer decided that he didn't want to. He wanted to go back to writing. And I became a co-director producer on the Winnie the Pooh series, and which led to an Emmy for doing that.
Very nice.
And right after that, I did that for about 3 years, and then moved on to Tailspin. I was art directing at first, and then I moved into directing. I had 13 shows to direct, and I had them all boarded, and they were all being animated, and I got a call from Features, and they said, "How would you like to come back to Features?" And I said, "I'd love to."
And that was going to be on Beauty and the Beast, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the statement was, "Well, we've had the show over in London for a year, and it just wasn't what they had thought they were going to get from the Purdums." And so they pulled it all back. And I went over and worked with Brian McEntee, who I thank him up one side and down the other. Brian was a great guy to work with.
Yeah, and he was he the art director?
Yeah, he was the art director
for Beauty and the Beast, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Kirk and Gary and everybody who eventually became a who's who, there was about 13 of us that were called in, and we sat in Jeffrey Katzenberg's office, and he basically told us, "Look, guys, we spent a year. I want 2 sequences up on boards in 3 months. And if you can't do that, then we're going to shut down Features."
Yeah.
And I went, oh. Again, and it was another, what?
I think that was an empty threat from Jeff.
Oh, yeah, that's
personally,
Jeffrey.
Because Roy was still heavily involved, and he wasn't going to let that happen.
Right. But we all went, okay, well, all right. So what they did is they took us and they put us on the main lot in the old ink and paint area. And we did Be Our Guest, and I can't remember what the second sequence was. I think it was When Belle Meets the Beast, but I'm not positive about that. Memory's going on that one. But I do remember Be Our Guest. And so we ran it for him, and he said, "Great, that's it. Let's go. Let's do it." So we all moved back over to Airway, which was another.
Well, it was another warehouse building.
Yeah.
I mean, just call it what it was. I mean, these were all warehouse buildings.
Yeah, they were all warehouses over in Glendale.
As the animation department started to expand again, we spilled out of 1420, the one warehouse, and started taking over other warehouse spaces.
And it was almost, it was kind of an interesting way to work, because we were in that warehouse. And since I was the head of layout at the time, I had to walk through WDI to go back to 1420, which is where background was.
Yeah.
So daily, I got my exercise going back and forth between the two buildings.
Yeah.
And it was a fun time, because everybody
The Airway building, that's the old Glendale airport terminal.
Yeah,
that used to be a terminal with the control tower attached to it, which is still there, which is a historic building, which also I think they had some Roger Rabbit work done in that building. Yeah.
It was, so things were starting to move at that point. It was going, and everybody saw how well the story was going, and the movie was progressing, and Howard, and
Alan Menken
was having his issues at the time.
Yeah, Howard was sick. Yeah,
and but that movie was the quickest film done, other than O'Connor would tell me that Dumbo was the only movie that was done under budget for Disney.
And done fairly quickly. Yeah, but it was a much more simplified movie, and it was also a shorter film.
Yeah. Beauty and the Beast. It's usually, as you know, it's 3 to 4 years in production, usually a feature.
Yeah.
When we got it in production at this point, we were doing it here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Almost to the day, 1 year in layout. Yeah. And that was amazing to me. But it was so foretelling because it was, a few years later, I got onto Atlantis as head of layout. I was on that.
I don't want you jumping ahead, man, because there's you don't you jump ahead on us like that.
Well, there's a story there.
I get it. But you're on Beauty and the Beast. You're the layout supervisor on Beauty and the Beast. Let's get through Beauty. Let's get through Beauty.
We'll get through Beauty.
I'm just your friendly wrangler.
Okay. Beauty, we did it in 1 year. Layout, boom. And it was great because I got to touch the computer at that point. Before then, I had played when we were on the main lot. I played with Asus, which was their first computer camera that they used for the black hole.
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out how to use it in animation. But CAPS was there, and it allowed me to do things with layout that we couldn't do before. And obviously Maya was coming into play. And so when they said, well, we've got the computers now, we can do this. And I said, well, then let's pick the spot to really use the computer, which was the ballroom. It was the climax. They were dancing. Let's use the computer there rather than trying to show off like, well, we can go through a forest and they have trees moving. Well, yeah, big deal. I liked it's all, for me, it's all based on story. You gotta use your equipment, and whether it's music or camera or animation or whatever, it's gotta support the story.
Right.
And so that's what we did. We used the ballroom, and the CG guys were really, really up on doing that.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that CG was used, but It was really the first time that there was a real traveling camera with 2D animated characters, the camera going around the ballroom and all that. And just so our listeners know, the first, and this will be on the quiz later, people, the first Disney animated feature to actually use any computer animation was the Black Cauldron. And then after that, it was Great Mouse Detective with the clock gear sequence. Yeah. And each of the pictures after, started to get a little bit more computer animation and a little bit more sophisticated.
Right. The Black Cauldron and especially the Mouse Detective was basically a program that had to be printed out on paper, which was then shot with the Xerox machines.
Yeah, and later on, they were I believe me, a lot of that went through the effects department. So on Black Cauldron, we had to tape up the printed drawing, and then we had to clean them up a little bit, touch them up because the printing wasn't that great.
Yeah, pin printer.
And the same with the clock gear sequence at the Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah.
That was even more complex.
Yeah. So it was during that time you could see the computers growing in technology, and but it was so much fun being able to do a camera move and be in there and actually manipulate the machine and doing the pans, where before and it was immediate. you'd see it on the screen rather than waiting 2 days for a film and then going, oh my God, we got to redo it. Boy, did
but you could make the adjustments on the fly and basically see it almost in real time, the adjustments.
So we did that, and that obviously tells the story. It did wonderful. And I expected to stay at Features, but I had a contract with the company, and I had signed it at TV, and they allowed me to come back to Features as long as they needed me. And so after Beauty, I thought, well, I'll work on the next picture, Aladdin. But that didn't happen. And I went back to TV and art directed the Little Mermaid TV series.
Okay.
For the first season. And then I decided that TV wasn't for me anymore because management had changed a little bit and they were just trying to push stuff through. And I just wanted to do higher quality stuff.
Right.
And artwork. And so I contacted Features and said, if you have room, I'm more than happy to come back and just do layout. I don't have to be in charge. I just want to be able to work on a movie that has a single thought that we can go through. And Lion King had popped up. And so I came back and was working layout on Lion King. I helped design Pride Rock. I was working with Dan St. Pierre at the time. And during that period, Dan had some health issues and had to take some time off. And I was asked to take over. And I said, well, I'll be his assistant or his second. And when he comes back, he can have his show because he had set it all up.
Yeah.
And so while he was gone, we were working on the Pride Rock area, and I had come into work early one day, and I had built a model of Pride Rock, and I was working on the design because Jeffrey Katzenberg wasn't quite sure if he wanted it realistic or if he wanted to go designy or how far. So what I did is I did a super realistic version. I had Tom Shannon had done a super realistic version of the shapes that we had created, and I did a very designy UPA style one. I knew which one Jeffrey was going to go for, so I was trying to just drive the answer out of him basically. Yeah. And so of course he picked the more natural one. But it was funny. One morning I came in, it was about 8:00 and I hear piano playing. This was Hart Dannon building, which was another warehouse in Glendale. And I hear piano playing. Who the hell at 8 a.m. is playing piano? God damn, and it's like, I get it from my desk because it was just on the other side of the wall from my office. And I walk out and there's nobody in the place except a baby grand piano and Elton John. and I said, oh, hi. When I was a teenager, I couldn't get tickets to see Elton John if my life depended upon it. Now I'm standing 6 feet away from him. And he's playing, and he goes, hey, you want to hear a song? Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And he said, here. And he played Circle of Life for me.
Was anybody else there? It wasn't just him by himself, was it?
Yeah. And then a couple people came in because they heard the piano playing.
Yeah.
And I wish I had my camera. There was no cameras at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's a really cool song, but it's an Elton John song. That doesn't quite fit Africa to me. But it was great to hear, and I was great that he was playing it. But that's when they got the score. I can't think of his name now. The German
Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer, yeah.
To come in. It's beautiful. He just played that thing out. I was lucky enough to do at that time, my kids were in school and they, what does your dad do? Come in the dad's school day. So I come in and they said, well, what did you do at Disney? I said, well, I just killed Mufasa. And they're like, what? And I said, well, yeah, that was a sequence that I did. So I had the Mufasa, the wildebeest chase. I worked with a great board artist. It was Tom Enriquez had boarded, and I got to manipulate, his drawings and mine together. And it's funny, people will ask me, they say, well, all that movement in there, this is where we use the computer to its best, because they were all 2D backgrounds. There were no CG backgrounds in that. But what we did, in every shot that had clouds, we had a single painting painted, and we went from the vanishing point and we stretched the backgrounds from the vanishing point so that anything closest to the vanishing point moves smaller, slower than points that are out towards the edge of the painting. And so it made the clouds look like they were moving. So out of one piece of artwork, we got a full motion, and the pan up the side of the hill where you see the wildebeest. I did a vertical pan, which means the camera's moving, up and down.
North and south, yeah.
And what we did is that we collapsed the ground plane to 0 and attached it to the top of the vertical pan. And when it came into the field of view, we started to stretch it out. So it made it look like the camera was tilting.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we attached the wildebeest in CG. We gave them points, and they attached the wildebeest to the ground plane so they wouldn't slip. Yeah. So it was all 2D with CG.
That wildebeest sequence is spectacular in The Lion King. It's absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully staged. It's beautifully directed. Yeah. And the wildebeest, even though they're CG, they're actually, super, believable. They integrate really well.
Yes. So that was a big learning experience for me, because I said, okay, now we've got all our tools. It's like being in a toy box. Okay, now I know I can do 2D with the CG, and we can get, we can do anything that we want now. And so at that point, Hunchback popped up, and I was.
Yeah, but before we get to Hunchback, I got to ask you, Lion King was really the pinnacle hit movie, if you will, from the Disney Renaissance, I think, right? Yes. Because we were, we were driving from Little Mermaid to, Beauty to Aladdin. And I know I'm skipping over Rescuers Down Under, but Rescuers Down Under was really a transition picture from the old cell animation, the hand-painted cells, to the cap system and the computer-generated or the computer ink and paint and compositing that we were doing with caps. So, and I really shouldn't skip over it, but it was Mermaid, it was Rescuers Down Under, then Beauty, Aladdin, and Lion King, and it was sort of like hit after hit after hit. I think we were all blown away by how exciting that period was when the reports were coming in about, the theaters were filling evening showings of these movies and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was also a time of upheaval. There was a lot of stuff going on, because George Ghertner had been the director on Lion King at that time, and then Roger and then Rob came in. Rob Minkoff came in.
Yeah.
And at that time, there were two groups of productions going on. There was Pocahontas and Lion King. And the stories in both movies died 1 week. I remember they were gone. It was like, oh my God, we had 3,000 people out of work just sitting there waiting for the stories to get rebuilt. And
it wasn't 3,000 people, but it was a lot.
Yeah,
it was like 500 or 600 people. That's when they were doing two crews, and there was also a lot of people who wanted to bypass Lion King because early on Lion King was troubled. But again, the history at Disney is the most troubled pictures rise like a phoenix from the ashes and become the most successful. So
it's true.
Yeah, it really is true. Yeah.
And and everybody has a commentary. I do. I thought Pocahontas was a great idea to do, but I have always felt that the story wasn't handled correctly in my mind. To me, it was a Disney picture, but they were trying to make a live action picture out of it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why didn't you just take it from the animal's point of view and then have kind of like a Lady and the Tramp where Pocahontas and Smith were in the background and let the animals play out the
that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of issues, a lot of cross currents on Pocahontas, but I still think it's a beautiful picture.
Oh yeah, no, it's Mike Giamo is an excellent art director.
Yeah. So
I did a book on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I did actually one of the books for the Colors of the Wind book for him. But no, and everybody could say that about any one of the pictures. They should have done this. Monday morning quarterbacking is probably the first thing that everybody can hit on, especially animation. But at the end of Lion King, I was still kind of in charge, helping Dan come back into the world of Lion King. Kirk and Gary and the gang went on their boondoggle to Paris for Hunchback.
The research trip for Hunchback.
And so I went.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was.
And when you say you went, had they approached you and said, we want you to work on this picture?
Yes.
Yeah. So
it was all set, but it was, I didn't want to leave Lion King in the lurch and until Dan was back and things were running. So we went over to Paris, and I had a full reign of Paris, which was amazing. I got to go into Notre Dame. I have pictures. I was hoping that they'd probably ask me because I have all the pictures of the interior of the cathedral before it burned down.
Yeah.
I mean, I took hundreds of thousands. But it was great to be there and be in the world of what the story took place.
Right.
And really enjoyed it. And the artists over at Disney in Paris were amazing.
And Paul and Gaetan Brizzi, the Brizzi brothers, they worked on the opening. It was the opening sequence.
Yes,
of Hunchback?
the opening sequence. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are just phenomenal artists, aren't they?
Yeah, they were, and really nice guys to work with. I actually had worked with them at TV because TV animation, Disney TV had bought their studio and then brought it into the company, and then it became a feature.
Yeah, that became the Walt Disney Animation Studios Paris.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so during that sequence, we had to, I was given the task by Peter Schneider, who was then the president of animation.
Yeah, president of Disney Animation.
Working with the storyboard guys, we had a pullback from Notre Dame all the way across the city.
Yeah, yeah.
And Peter was sitting right in front of me, and he turns around and he goes, "Well, Mr. Ghertner, I'd like to see you do that one." And I said, okay, so give me a month, And so I did. I had 15 levels of
that's I think one of the most impressive shots in the movie. And also that's the shot that I think that's the shot where there's a satellite dish on the top of one of the buildings, right? Right.
Yeah.
There is, right?
Well, yeah.
That's one of the little Easter eggs that people can find. Yeah.
And if you look at the drawing, Scott Capel was one of the layout guys. He had drawn, because it was 24 field paper, which is 20
huge
by 16.
Huge paper.
He has a Starship Enterprise up in the corner on one of them that was outside the field. But
and wasn't Belle? Didn't they put Belle into from Beauty and the Beast? Belle is walking down a street during the pullout or something like that.
Yeah,
you really have to look for her.
Yeah,
right?
that's the era when Easter eggs started popping up. People are going, "Oh, look, the castle. This looks like a genitalia and this and that." So he said, well, let's give people something to look at then.
Yeah.
Stuff in.
Yeah, but I mean, those things that we did were fun little Easter eggs that people could
it wasn't nasty stuff.
There was nothing salacious or dirty or filthy or offensive.
It was an inside joke.
They were little fun things.
Yeah. And then you and I had something which we'll talk about in a little bit here.
Well, honestly, I'm looking at the clock, so I kind of feel like we should break here.
Okay.
And we'll pick it up next week because we're just bumping up against time, and you got some great stories, but we'll get to it. And so I think what we'll do is next week we'll pick up and we'll continue talking about Hunchback. Okay.
Okay, that's great.
All right, Ed. Thank you for being on the Skull Rock podcast.
Thanks, Dave.
What I'm here to tell you is the fact that it's time for the Disney Travel Deal of the Week. Kristen has got to save you money. Yes, it is her lifelong mission, not mission space, but it is her lifelong mission to bring you these travel deals and help save you money. But your charge is to book with her. Yes, you can support the show, book your Disney trip with her, and book your Disney vacation, your Disney cruise, your Universal cruise, any cruise line, or Adventures by Disney with Kristen. She's going to give you that white glove service you so know and love. And if you haven't experienced it, what are you waiting for? Kristen, what's the deal for this week?
Well, you can see up to $200 per night on a 3-night, 2-day room and ticket package at select Disney resort hotels. It's right. We've got new travel deals. Okay.
Nice.
I'm excited. I got really tired of telling that same travel deal at work.
We were talking about it for 6 weeks straight. It was insane.
Oh, wasn't it longer than
Probably longer than that.
I more
clipped,
like 6 months, but okay.
Just in case you're wondering, I actually clip out this section to put in the other podcasts that I do. And so it's funny because sometimes we're talking about stuff that's completely random. It just shows up on the other podcast.
Perfect.
It's like for the past couple of weeks, I've been saying, "Cat, take my hand." Literally from that commercial we did 4 weeks ago. It's like, "Cat, take my hand." Yes, take my hand, Cat. It's just... Anyway, go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. As I was saying, you can save up to $200 per night on a 3-night, 2-day room and ticket package at select Walt Disney World Resort hotels. This is going to be for arrivals most nights, February 26th to June 30th of 2025. We're already talking next summer.
Awesome.
What? Right?
Yes.
So a minimum of 3 nights, a minimum of 2 days. You can stay, though, as many as 14 nights if you want.
There you go.
And again, it varies. So, if you're staying at the deluxe and the deluxe villas, that's where you're going to save the $200 a night. If you're staying at most of the moderates are the 120s, and most of the values fit the $60 per night. But no matter how you slice it, dice it, whatever, it's a good deal.
Okay. I agree. It's a phenomenal deal. And Kristen, once again, knows her way around the system so she can get you the best deal ever. If new deals are released, Disney's not going to give you your money back. Kristen will certainly help you save money. And tell everybody, Kristen, what your email address is so they can get started and book their next Disney vacation with you.
It's themeparksandcruises@gmail.com.
Love it.
Hi, this is Disney animator Doug Bennett, and you are listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your Main Street to the world of Disney.
Yet another great interview. I hope our audience has been enjoying these interview segments that we're going to be doing for the next few weeks right here on Skull Rock Podcast. But don't forget, if you love Disney and pop culture, be sure to like and subscribe to all of our feeds there. Wherever you find podcasts, of course, we're all available on all the major services, including now YouTube. So check that out as well. And we would certainly love it if you gave us those 5-star reviews. Everything helps the algorithm and gets us in front of more people. Leave us those reviews and those algorithms will just be popping. Skull Rock Podcast. Share the show as well. We're on all the socials, as I mentioned, Facebook, X. Dave and I are both on LinkedIn, also Instagram. And you can check out the vault of shows there at skullrockpodcast.com. You can even throw some money in the tip jar, if you will. There's a little sponsor link in there if you feel so inclined to support what we do as we bring you this show for free every single week. You can also email Dave and myself. Listener feedback is important. Dave at skullrockpodcast.com or Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. You can also find me on Instagram. The best way to find me, Aljon Go on Instagram. You can also check out my other podcast that I host with my wife, Kristen, and Kat R. Corey, called Dining at Disney Podcast, where we talk about Disney parks and food. You can find that drop twice a week wherever you find podcasts as well. Dave?
Yeah, and Aljon, as I've been mentioning to people over the past month or so, February 21st to the 23rd is the Animation You All Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're going to be there. Aljon and I are going to be there, believe it or not, in person together for the first time. And also, I just want to remind folks, you can hear my Tunes Behind the Tunes show on SiriusXM, Disney Hits, channel 133. Each month we spotlight a new show. You can get signed copies of my books at theoldmillpress.com, and of course you can check me out on davidbossert.com with a bunch of free content and free stuff you can send away for. And with that, Aljon, I'm going to say go out, have a fantastic week, everybody. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you back here next Monday right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.